Krith's eyes flickered toward her, then away. For a long time he did not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Because I feared dying alone." Dana looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his words. The firelight flickered between them, and for the first time, she saw not an enemy or an exile, but another soul trying to survive. Outside, the storm began to rise again, but inside the broken shuttle, the human and the alien sat close to the fire, two unwilling allies learning to share more than just warmth. The next morning came colder than any before. Dana woke to the sound of frost cracking along the walls of the shuttle wreck, sharp little pops like glass breaking. Her breath hung in the air as a pale cloud. Krith was already awake, crouched by the dying fire, turning over scraps of metal as if he could will them into more fuel. "We need to move," Dana muttered, pulling herself upright. Her joints ached from the night inside the cocoon. "If we stay here too long, we'll starve." Krith gave her a flat look. His silver skin gleamed faintly in the morning light that filtered through cracks in the hull. "There is no food," he said. "This world is dead." "Nothing is ever completely dead," Dana answered. She stood, stretching her stiff arms, then pulled on her torn gloves. "Life always finds a way. The question is whether we're smart enough to find it first." Krith tilted his head, watching her as if she was some puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he rose to his full height, towering over her. "Then show me, human. Show me how your kind digs life from a grave." Together, they set out across the snowfields. The storm had lessened, but the wind still bit at their faces. Dana led, her eyes scanning for movement, for shadows, for anything that might hint at food or fuel. Krith followed, his heavy steps leaving deep prints behind. He moved with silent strength, but Dana noticed the stiffness in his limbs. His body was built for hot worlds, not for endless cold. After hours of walking, Dana found something. It was small, a cluster of thin gray plants poking up from a crack in the ice. She knelt, brushing snow away carefully. "See," she said. "Not dead." Krith crouched beside her, frowning at the brittle stalks. "It is nothing. It cannot feed us." "Not on its own," Dana agreed, pulling the plants free. "But if there are plants, there are things that eat them. And if there are things that eat them, there's food for us." Krith studied her with a strange intensity, then gave a grunt that might have been approval. By late afternoon, they found tracks again, those same heavy prints Dana had noticed the day before. This time they followed them, moving slowly, carefully. The tracks wound around jagged ice formations, down into a shallow valley where the snow thinned. Dana's heart quickened as she spotted movement ahead. A creature long and low, with crystal-like fur that shimmered in the pale sun. It pawed at the ground, tearing up roots with sharp claws. "There," Dana whispered. Krith's eyes narrowed. "Predator," he said. "Not prey." As if on cue, the creature lifted its head. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, locking on them. A low growl rumbled through the air, vibrating in Dana's chest. "Back up," she whispered, raising her makeshift spear. But the beast moved faster than she expected. It leapt across the snow, jaws snapping. Dana barely dodged aside, swinging her spear wildly. The sharp edge scraped across the creature's side, leaving only a shallow mark. Krith roared, throwing himself forward. His massive hand caught the beast by the neck, slamming it into the snow. The creature thrashed, claws raking at his arm, tearing through his coat. Krith grunted in pain but held firm. Dana darted in, jabbing her spear into the creature's chest. It gave a shrill, crystal-like scream, then went still. For a long moment both of them breathed hard, staring down at the fallen beast. Dana's heart pounded, her hands trembling from the rush of fear and adrenaline. Krith finally released the creature, his arm bleeding where claws had cut deep. He looked at Dana, his expression unreadable. "You fight like a cornered animal," he said. "You're welcome," Dana shot back, though her voice shook. She bent down, examining the beast's body. Its flesh wasn't crystal after all, it was layered with tough, translucent scales. She pressed her knife into it, cutting away a strip. "Meat," she said, relief washing through her. "We have food." By the time they carried the carcass back to the shuttle, the sky was darkening again. Dana set about skinning and cooking what she could over the fire. The smell was strange, sharp and metallic, but it was warm, and it was life. Krith sat opposite her, his wounded arm wrapped in torn cloth. He studied her quietly as she worked, his pale eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. At last he spoke. Among my people I would not have saved you. A weak ally is a dead one. Dana paused, glancing up at him. And yet you saved me today. Krith's mouth tightened, his ridged brow lowering. You saved me as well, perhaps. That makes us even. She gave a small smile, tired but sincere. Or maybe it means we're partners. Krith didn't answer right away. He only stared into the fire, his sharp features softened by the glow. Then slowly he nodded. That night, as the storm rose again and they settled into the cocoon, Dana felt a shift. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was something close, a recognition that survival was no longer a solitary struggle. They were two lives bound together by need, learning to fight not only the cold, but the fear that had once kept them apart. And for the first time since the crash, Dana let herself believe she might see the stars again. The fire had burned low, only faint embers glowing in the dark wreck. Dana shifted uneasily, the cocoon pressed tight around her and Krith. His breathing was heavier than before, slower, and she could hear the faint hiss of pain he tried to hide. The wounds on his arm from the beast's claws were worse than she wanted to admit. When morning came, the storm was calm, but the world outside looked sharper, colder, as if danger hid beneath every drift of snow. Dana knelt by Krith's side, unwrapping the cloth around his arm. The gashes were red and raw, still bleeding slightly. She winced. This will fester if we don't clean it, she said. Krith looked down at her, his stone-colored eyes steady. It will heal. My blood is strong, Dana shook her head. Infection doesn't care how strong you think you are. You'll be dead in 2 days if we ignore it. She pulled a small case from her pack, shaking out what little medical supplies she had left. Some antiseptic wipes, a tiny roll of bandage, and a single injector of pain relief. Not much, but it was all she had. She worked carefully, cleaning the wounds, ignoring his occasional flinch. Krith watched her silently, his jaw tight. Finally he muttered, strange. A human spends strength to save one who is not her kin. Why? Dana didn't look up. Because that's what we do. We keep each other alive. If I leave you, I'll be next. If you leave me, you'll be next. Survival isn't about one person. It's about both. Krith said nothing, but his gaze lingered on her face as if weighing her words. By afternoon, they left the wreck again. Dana insisted they needed more wood-like material, more fuel, more food. The creature they had killed wouldn't last forever, and the fire demanded something to keep it burning. Krith walked with her, though his steps were slower, his wound sapping his strength. Dana found herself walking beside him more than ahead, ready to steady him if he stumbled. The ice valley stretched out before them, sharp ridges rising like broken teeth. Shadows clung between the peaks, long and heavy. Dana felt uneasy as they moved deeper, her spear gripped tight in her hands. Suddenly, Krith stopped. His nostrils flared, his body going tense. Something follows, he growled. Dana froze, her heart pounding. She listened, straining past the wind. At first, there was nothing. Then she heard it, the crunch of footsteps behind them, heavy and deliberate. She turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. From the ridge above, shapes appeared. Not one beast this time, 3 moving with smooth predatory grace. Their crystal-like bodies shimmered faintly, their glowing eyes locked onto the pair below. Run, Dana whispered. Krith bared his teeth. No, they will chase. We fight. The first beast leapt down, claws flashing. Dana thrust her spear upward, catching it in the chest. The impact knocked her back, sending her sprawling in the snow. The creature snarled, its weight pressing down, but she rolled aside just in time to avoid its snapping jaws. Krith charged the second beast, his injured arm still bleeding but his other fist swinging with brutal force. He slammed into the predator, knocking it into the ice. The ground shook with the impact. He roared, slamming his knee into its body again and again. The third beast circled, eyes glowing, waiting for its chance. Dana scrambled to her feet, gripping the spear tighter. Krith! She shouted. He turned just as the third lunged. With his injured arm, he couldn't block fast enough. Dana didn't think. She ran forward, driving her spear straight into the beast's side. It howled, thrashing violently, but Dana held on, teeth gritted until it collapsed into the snow. Breathless, she looked around. Krith had crushed his beast with raw strength, its broken form lying motionless at his feet. The last one, the one she had stabbed, was twitching weakly, its glow fading. The valley was silent again, save for their heavy breathing. Dana's chest heaved, her hands shaking as she pulled the spear free. 3 of them, she muttered. There could be more. Krith was hunched, his arm dripping blood, his chest rising and falling like a hammer. The storm had not ended for 3 days, and Dana Mercer was starting to think the planet itself wanted her gone. Her shuttle had fallen out of orbit like a dying bird, tearing through the clouds and crashing into the ice fields. Now she was alone, stranded on a frozen world that felt endless, with only a broken transmitter and a few emergency packs to keep her alive. The wind screamed across the white plains, carrying snow that cut her face like knives. Each night the temperature dropped lower, so low that her suit's heater gave warnings she had never seen before. Dana had been trained for emergencies. She knew how to ration water, how to set up a shelter from wreckage, how to stay calm. But this world was not like the training simulations. Nothing moved here, no trees, no sound of rivers, only the howl of storms and the cracking of distant ice. Even the sky above felt empty, its stars sharp and uncaring. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself as she crouched in the corner of her collapsed shuttle, listening to the wind rattle the metal walls. On the third night, something moved outside. At first she thought it was the storm playing tricks on her mind. Then she saw it, a tall figure in the snow, broad-shouldered, moving with slow steps. Her first thought was that it was a rescuer, another human who had found her beacon. But when the figure stepped closer, light from the broken shuttle caught on its skin, pale silver, almost glowing. Its face was not human. The mouth was set lower, the eyes stretched long and narrow, and ridges curved along its skull like armor. Dana reached for the flare gun by her side, aiming it with shaking hands. "Stay back!" she shouted into the storm. The figure stopped, tilting its head as if considering her words. Then it spoke, its voice deep, rough, but strangely clear. "Human." The word sounded strange, heavy in its mouth. "You survive here?" Dana blinked. It spoke her language, broken, accented, but understandable. She lowered the flare gun only slightly. "Who are you?" The creature came closer, until she could see the frost clinging to its thick coat of woven fibers. "Exile," it said simply. "Krith of the Vaynor. This world is my punishment. Now I see it as yours too." Dana's instincts screamed danger. She had heard of the Vaynor, an alien race that lived far from human colonies, proud and fierce. They were known for honor duels, for warriors that never bent to anyone. And here, standing outside her broken shuttle, was one who claimed to be an exile. "I don't need company," Dana said firmly. "Go find your own shelter." Krith made a low sound, something between a laugh and a growl. He stepped forward again, snow crunching beneath his heavy boots. "There is no shelter. Only ice, only storm. Alone you will not last the week." Dana lifted the flare gun higher, though her hand trembled. "I'll manage." For a moment, the two of them stared at one another, human and alien, both half buried in frost and exhaustion. Then another gust of wind howled across the plains, and Krith flinched, pulling his coat tighter. His breath came out in white clouds. "The night will kill you," Krith said. His voice rose, harsh and commanding now, as if anger could push through her stubbornness. "Get in my bed, human. We're freezing out here." Dana froze. For a wild second, she thought she had misheard. Then she realized what he meant. Krith opened a pack at his side and pulled out a folded shape. Thick layered fabric stitched with strange symbols. It was not a bed in the human sense, but a cocoon-like pod meant for his kind, designed to trap and hold heat. Dana's pride fought with her survival instinct. She didn't want to trust this alien, didn't want to share space with someone she had just met. But another cold wind cut through her cracked suit seals, biting into her skin, and she knew the truth. One more night alone, and she might not wake up at all. She lowered the flare gun slowly, never taking her eyes off him. "Fine," she said at last, her voice tight. "But if you try anything—" Krith bared sharp teeth in something like a smile. "If I wanted you dead, human, you would already be gone." Reluctantly, Dana stepped closer. Together they dragged the cocoon into the wreck of the shuttle, setting it against the warmest corner. Inside, the space was cramped, far too small for two grown beings of different species. Yet when the fabric closed around them, heat began to build quickly, melting the frost from Dana's hair and easing the ache in her stiff fingers. For the first time in days, she did not feel like ice was crawling into her bones. She lay tense, every muscle tight, as Krith settled across from her, his alien eyes half shut. "This does not mean I trust you," Dana said quietly. Krith gave a slow nod. "Good, trust is for the weak. But survival is for those who endure." Outside, the storm howled without mercy. Inside, two enemies turned allies lay pressed together in unwilling truce, and the first fragile thread of an unlikely bond began to form. The night dragged on like an endless wait. Dana could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the heat of Krith's presence too close to her own. The steady sound of his breathing, the faint glow of his skin in the dark cocoon. She had never been this close to a Venar before. They were taller, heavier, built for strength rather than speed. His chest rose and fell slowly, the air steaming from his nostrils like a resting animal. She kept one hand on the flare gun tucked against her hip, hidden under the thin blanket. Her other hand pressed against the cocoon wall, feeling the warmth collect there. It was strange, this fragile bubble of life in a world of death. Outside, the storm battered the wreck, snow piling against the broken metal, wind screaming like it wanted to bury them alive. Inside, the heat was almost too much, a shared breath keeping them both alive. When morning came, Dana stirred first. Krith's eyes snapped open at the smallest movement. They were pale like polished stone but sharp with awareness. For a long moment, they simply watched each other. Two strangers bound by need rather than choice. Finally, Dana spoke. "You said you're in exile," she said. Her voice was dry, almost cracking from thirst. "What did you do?" Krith sat up, the cocoon stretching awkwardly around his frame. "I lost," he said at last. "Among my people, to lose in challenge is to be cast out. Exile means dishonor. Death is better. But I refused death." Dana studied him. She had read reports about the Venar. They valued strength above all else. Losing a fight could erase your name, your place, even your family. She tried to imagine what it was like to be thrown away like that. "So they left you here to freeze," she said flatly. Krith gave a rough sound, something like laughter but bitter. This world was chosen well. It kills slowly. Dana crawled out of the cocoon, shivering as the cold of the shuttle wrapped around her again. "Well, unlucky for them, I don't plan on dying here." She moved to the corner where she had laid her gear and began rummaging through it. She found her ration pack nearly empty and frowned. "We need food, and we need fire." "Fire?" Krith tilted his head. "The cocoon is enough. Not for long." Dana shook her head. "If my beacon runs out of power, we'll need heat outside of this thing. And maybe light to signal a ship." She pulled pieces of metal and wiring from the shuttle's wreck. "I can build something. Humans improvise." Krith watched as she began to scrape frost off the wires and snap them into smaller pieces. His ridged brow furrowed. "Strange. Your tools are broken, yet you still play with them as if they will listen." "They will," Dana said. She sparked two wires together, the small flash making her smile for the first time in days. "See? All it takes is stubbornness." They worked in silence for some time, Dana setting up a crude fire pit with scraps, Krith silently observing, his arms folded across his chest. Eventually, when the first flames flickered to life, his eyes widened slightly. "You make warmth from nothing," he said, as if the idea offended him. "Among my kind, fire is not used. We take the heat of our world. Here there is none." "That's the difference," Dana replied. "When humans don't have something, we make it." Krith crouched by the fire, his clawed hands stretched toward the flickering flames. He looked almost childlike for a moment, staring at the fire as though it was a spirit. Dana noticed the way his breath slowed, the way his shoulders eased. He had never seen something so simple, yet so powerful. As the fire warmed the shuttle's hollow shell, Dana sat opposite him. "If we're going to survive, we need rules," she said. "You don't touch my pack. You don't turn your back on me. And if I say run, you run." Krith gave her a sharp look, then bared his teeth. "And if I say fight, you fight." Dana hesitated, then nodded. "Deal." Later that day, they went out into the snow together. The storm had eased a little, though the wind still cut against their faces like knives. Dana carried a makeshift spear fashioned from broken hull metal. Krith carried nothing but his own strength, his broad hands curling into fists. They searched the ice fields, hoping for something, anything alive. Dana found frozen plants hidden under the snow, brittle stalks that crumbled in her hands. Krith pointed out strange tracks too large for any animal she knew. The world was not as empty as it looked. When the sun dipped low, painting the sky red against the white fields, they returned to the wreck. The fire still burned low and the cocoon waited for them. Dana sat close to the flames, rubbing her hands together. Krith lowered himself across from her, silent as always. Finally, she asked, Why didn't you just let the cold take you? If exile is worse than death, why bother fighting? He looked at her, his expression unreadable, then nodded. You fight like one of us, he said quietly. Fierce without fear. Dana gave a weak laugh. I was terrified. Fear is nothing, Krith said. It is action that matters. They dragged the carcasses back to the wreck. The extra meat and hides would help them, but Dana worried about something more. These creatures weren't random hunters. They had moved like a pack, smart and patient. It meant the world was more dangerous than she had thought. That night, as they huddled close again in the cocoon, Krith's voice broke the silence. Among my people, only the strongest are worthy. The weak are abandoned. But you... He hesitated as if the words cost him. You are not strong like us, yet you survive. You make strength where none exists. Fire, spears, rules. This unsettles me. Dana looked at him, surprised at the honesty in his voice. Maybe strength isn't just about muscles and fighting, she said softly. Sometimes it's about refusing to give up even when the odds are terrible. Krith's pale eyes lingered on her for a long moment. Then he closed them, his breathing slow and steady. Outside, the storm returned, sweeping across the ice fields with merciless power. Inside, human and alien lay close in the fragile warmth, their uneasy bond deepening through every shared battle. Every choice to fight instead of surrender. For the first time, Dana realized Krith was no longer just an exile. He was her ally. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to see her people not as weak survivors, but as something far more dangerous. The days began to blur into each other, one storm after another. Dana had stopped counting how long they had been stranded. The shuttle wreck was half buried under snow now, the walls groaning from the weight of ice. The fire flickered weakly most nights, and the cocoon had become their only true safety. Food was harder to find. The pack of crystal beasts had not returned, but smaller prey seemed almost non-existent. Dana worried that they were only surviving because the predators themselves were thinning, chasing the same scraps of life they hunted for. She rationed their supplies carefully, though hunger gnawed at her belly each night. Krith grew restless, his broad shoulders tense, his pale eyes sharper with every passing day. One evening, after another long and empty search for food, Dana sat by the dim fire, staring into the flickering flames. Krith loomed nearby, silent as always. She finally broke the quiet. We can't keep this up, she muttered. We're running out of everything. Krith did not answer right away. His gaze lingered on the dark outside, the endless expanse of snow and jagged ice. Finally he said, You should have left me. Dana blinked, frowning. What are you talking about? My wounds, Krith said, lifting his arm where faint scars now cut across the ridges of his skin. They slowed me. I am weaker now. My people would abandon me. Perhaps you should do the same. Her chest tightened with sudden anger. That's not how humans work, she snapped. We don't just throw people away because they're hurt. Krith gave a low growl, not at her, but at the thought itself. Your way is strange. Among the vain, our weakness spreads like a sickness. To carry the weak is to invite your own death. Maybe that's why you're here, Dana shot back. Maybe that's why they exiled you. Because you couldn't see past your own rules. The words stung even as she said them. Krith's face hardened, his jaw tight. For a moment she thought he might lash out. Instead he turned away, shoulders stiff, and walked into the corner of the wreck where the shadows swallowed him. That night in the cocoon, the silence was heavier than the storm outside. Dana lay tense, listening to Krith's slow breathing. She thought of how he had fought beside her, how he had nearly died holding back the beasts, and yet there was still a part of him that believed abandoning her, or being abandoned himself, was the only true path. The next day, Krith vanished. Dana woke to find the cocoon empty, his footprints leading out into the snow. For a moment panic gripped her chest. Had he left her? Was she alone again? She scrambled up, grabbing her spear, and followed the tracks. She found him on a ridge overlooking the valley, his massive frame outlined against the pale sky. He stood still, staring into the distance as if searching for something beyond the horizon. You planning on walking away? Dana called, her breath fogging the air. Krith didn't turn. If I leave, you may live longer. You won't have to carry my weakness. Dana climbed the ridge, her legs burning in the deep snow. When she reached him, she grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. His eyes burned with a mix of shame and something else she couldn't name. You think survival is about strength? She said, her voice sharp. But it's not. It's about refusing to quit. You give up on me now, you're not strong, you're just a coward. The word hung heavy between them. Krith's chest rose and fell, his jaw working as if he was holding back words that refused to form. Finally he rumbled, "Coward." He spat the word as though it was poison. Yes, Dana pressed. Running away is cowardice. Standing and fighting together, that's strength. For the first time since they met, Krith looked uncertain. His massive hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He turned his gaze toward the endless snow again, then back to her. Humans, you change what words mean. You make weakness sound like power. Maybe because it is, Dana said quietly. Helping each other, standing together, that's how we survive. Alone, we're dead. Together, we stand a chance. Krith stared at her, the storm wind whipping snow between them. Then slowly, he lowered his head in a gesture that looked almost like a bow. Perhaps I was exiled because I could not understand. Perhaps exile is the only way to learn. Dana released his arm, relief flooding through her chest. She gave a tired smile. Then learn fast. Because I don't plan on dying here, and neither do you. They walked back together, the tension between them softened. That night, when they returned to the cocoon, Krith's voice was low but steady. You said humans do not abandon. Then I will not abandon either. Not again. Dana closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her, but for the first time she felt a small spark of trust. Krith was beginning to see beyond his exile, beyond the cold laws of his people, and maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to see strength the way humans did. Not in standing alone, but in choosing not to walk away. Outside, the storm roared on. But inside, the fragile bond between human and alien held strong, tested and tempered like fire against the cold. The days passed with the same bitter cold, but something in the air between Dana and Krith had shifted. They no longer moved as strangers tied by survival, but as partners bound by choice. Still, the weight of endless storms pressed on them. Each morning Dana checked the beacon, and each morning the light was weaker. Its power cell was fading, and when it went out, their chance of rescue would vanish. That night she sat near the fire, staring at the small device in her hands. Its light blinked faintly, slow and sickly. Krith sat across from her, sharpening a shard of metal into a crude blade. His pale eyes flicked toward her, catching the strain on her face. It dies, he said. Dana nodded. Yeah, once it's gone, no one will find us. Krith tilted his head. Then we accept death. His voice was calm, almost resigned. Dana snapped her eyes up to him, anger sparking inside her. No, we don't accept. That's not what humans do. She set the beacon down and stood, pacing the small space. There's fuel left in the shuttle's cells. Enough to make something bright. Something that can be seen from orbit. Krith frowned. Madness. A spark that size could explode. You risk destroying the only shelter we have. Better than waiting here to freeze, Dana shot back. A risk is better than nothing. The alien stared at her, silent as if weighing her words. Finally, he shook his head slowly. You humans are reckless. You bet your lives against the void again and again. Why? Dana paused, her chest tight. She thought of the long history of her kind, sailing into oceans without maps, crossing stars without guarantees, fighting odds no sane creature would face. Because it's the only way we've ever moved forward, she said softly. We gamble, and sometimes we win. The next day she set to work. Krith helped despite his doubts, carrying the heavy fuel cells from the back of the wreck. They built a tower of scrap metal, piling broken pieces high into a crude beacon. Dana wired the cells together, her fingers numb from the cold but steady with determination. Sparks jumped as she tested the connections, making Krith flinch each time. If this fails, he growled, we will burn with it. Dana gave him a faint smile. Then we burn loud enough for the stars to notice. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned pale blue against the snow, Dana finished the last connection. She stepped back, breath clouding the air. This is it, she whispered. Krith stood beside her, massive arms folded, his expression grim. If this is your human gamble, then I will stand with you. Dana took a deep breath and pressed the trigger. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the fuel cells roared to life, a pillar of fire shooting into the sky. The light blazed across the ice fields, brighter than the sun. A furious torch screaming into the heavens. Heat washed over them, almost too much, but Dana didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on the sky, on the faint stars beginning to appear above. Krith shielded his face, his ridged brow furrowing. Madness, he muttered, but his voice was almost awed. Madness and fire. The blaze lasted only minutes before the cells ran dry, the fire collapsing into smoke. Silence fell again, heavier than before. The sky above remained empty. Dana's heart sank. She dropped to her knees in the snow, her chest tight with despair. Maybe it wasn't enough. Krith crouched beside her, his massive hand resting awkwardly on her shoulder. For once, his voice was gentle. You fought the void itself. That is enough. She shook her head, fighting the sting of tears. No, it has to be seen. Someone has to notice. They returned to the wreck, silent, the night closing around them. Dana curled into the cocoon, her body trembling not from cold but from exhaustion and fear. Krith lay across from her, his pale eyes watching her in the dim light. After a long pause, he said, If your fire does not call them, then nothing will. But if it does, then you have done what even a Vanar could not. You bent death to your will. Dana turned her head, meeting his gaze. It wasn't just me. You helped. Krith's expression softened for a fleeting moment. Perhaps exile was meant to teach me shame. Instead, it teaches me something else, she frowned. What? That humans are dangerous, he said quietly. Not because of strength, not because of weapons, but because you refuse to accept the end. The words lingered between them, heavier than the storm. Dana closed her eyes, letting exhaustion pull her under. Hours later, a sound broke the silence. A distant hum, faint at first, then louder. Krith's eyes snapped open. He sat up, his body tense, listening. Dana stirred, rubbing her eyes. What is it? The hum grew, steady and mechanical. She scrambled to her feet, rushing outside. The night sky shimmered with faint lights moving across the darkness. A ship. A real ship, its thrusters glowing as it scanned the surface. Dana's heart leapt. They saw it, she whispered. They saw the fire. Krith joined her, staring at the lights with something between awe and disbelief. For the first time since his exile began, he let out a sound that was almost a laugh. You were right, human, he said, his voice thick. The gamble wins. The lights grew brighter as the ship descended, cutting through the storm, its engines roaring like salvation. Dana felt tears freeze on her cheeks as relief rushed through her. They weren't saved yet, but for the first time, rescue was real. Beside her, Krith straightened to his full height, his chest swelling with pride not of his own strength, but of the reckless fire of humanity. The roar of the engines shook the frozen valley as the rescue ship lowered through the storm. Snow and ice swirled in great spirals, whipped into the air by the powerful thrusters. Dana stood frozen in place, staring up at the glowing lights. Her body trembled, but not from cold. This time it was pure relief, the kind that made her heart race and her chest feel too tight. Beside her, Krith's massive figure loomed, the storm winds tugging at his broad shoulders. His pale eyes reflected the glow of the ship like shards of silver. He looked at the vessel as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. The landing ramp extended, slamming into the snow with a heavy thud. Dana blinked back the sting in her eyes and ran forward, her boots sinking deep into the ice. Figures appeared through the haze, humans in survival suits, their voices muffled through helmets. Dana Price, one shouted, rushing toward her. We picked up your emergency flare. Dana almost laughed, though it came out as a shaky sob. You actually saw it. They caught her by the arms, steadying her as she swayed on weak legs. She hadn't realized until that moment just how exhausted she was. Weeks of hunger, storms, fear, and struggle all came crashing down at once. Behind her, Krith moved slowly toward the ramp, his heavy steps deliberate. The rescuers stiffened when they saw him, their hands drifting to weapons. His tall, ridged form was not something any human crew expected to see. Dana turned quickly, holding up a hand. Wait, he's not the enemy. He saved me. We survived together. The rescuers hesitated, eyes flicking between Dana and the alien. Krith stopped a few paces away, his face unreadable, though his eyes burned with quiet defiance. One of the humans lowered his weapon first. All right. If he helped you survive, then he comes with us. Dana let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her again. Krith inclined his head slightly, an almost regal gesture, though his pride was tempered by the storm around them. The rescuers guided Dana onto the ramp, offering blankets and water. She sank onto a bench inside the warm hold of the ship, the sudden heat making her shiver harder. It felt strange to be inside real walls again, not surrounded by snow and metal wreckage. Krith remained standing, towering over the human crew. His posture was rigid, as if ready for rejection at any moment. Dana caught his eye and gave a faint smile. "It's over," she whispered. He shook his head slightly. "For you, human, not for me," she frowned. "What do you mean?" Krith's gaze moved to the floor, heavy with unspoken weight. "Your people will take you home, my people. If they know I survived, they will not welcome me." Exile has no return. Dana's chest ached. She wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't fair, but the truth was carved into his scarred face. Still, she refused to let it end in silence. "Then stay," she said firmly. "Stay with us. You've seen what humans are." "We don't throw people away." Krith's jaw tightened. The human crew overheard, murmuring among themselves. Some looked wary, but others glanced at Dana with respect. The captain, a grizzled man with sharp eyes, stepped closer. "Is this true?" the captain asked Dana. "This alien stood with you?" Dana nodded quickly. "More than that. I wouldn't be here without him. He fought for me. He kept me alive." The captain studied Krith for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "Then as far as I'm concerned, he's earned passage. We'll figure the rest out later." For the first time, something shifted in Krith's expression. A flicker of surprise. A crack in the wall of exile he had built around himself. The ship lifted off, rising through the storm, breaking free of the icy prison below. Dana pressed her forehead to the window, watching the frozen wasteland shrink beneath them. She exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the glass. "We made it." Krith stood behind her, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. For a long while he said nothing. Then his deep voice rumbled low. "I understand now why they fear you." Dana turned her head, puzzled. "Fear us?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, not for your strength or your weapons, but because you refuse to surrender. You burn brighter when the void tries to snuff you out. Alone you should have died, but you made me stand with you. That is dangerous." Dana smiled faintly, leaning back against the seat. "Not dangerous, just human." Krith's pale eyes lingered on her, unreadable, then shifted back to the stars. Perhaps exile was not punishment. Perhaps it was a gift. Without it, I would never have learned this. Silence filled the hold, broken only by the steady hum of the engines. Dana let her eyes close, exhaustion finally dragging her down into sleep. When she dreamed, it was not of snow or hunger, but of fire lighting the dark, of a human and an alien standing together against the cold. And in that fragile alliance, something new had been born, something greater than exile, stronger than fear. Humanity's reckless fire had touched an outcast heart, and though the storm still raged across the stars, Dana knew one truth burned brighter than ever. They had survived. Together.